Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something really fascinating. We are diving right into a highly significant moment in recent Australian politics, specifically looking at the raw, unfiltered victory speeches from the One Nation Party right after their win in the federal lower house seat of Farrer. Now, my goal today is absolutely not to take political sides. Instead, we're going to take these raw speeches straight from the campaign trail and objectively break them down into structured, easy-to-understand policy pillars. We want to figure out exactly what was promised, how the campaign was actually run, and what this platform reveals about their broader political strategy moving forward.
To really grasp the energy of this win, we have to look at how the campaign viewed their own success. The winning candidate, David, delivered this incredibly emotive quote on election night. "We're like a mason with a chisel and a hammer, and we've recarving the letters into the Australian democracy." I mean, wow, right? This brilliantly illustrates the profound historic significance the party places on this lower house win. They aren't just framing this as winning a single seat. They are literally framing it as a fundamental structural shift in the democratic landscape.
So, to break this all down and analyze the proposed agenda objectively, we'll be looking at 5 key areas today. First, the historic lower house win itself. Second, agriculture, water, and the environment. Third, infrastructure and regional health. Fourth, immigration and national identity. And finally, the gas and energy strategy. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, a historic lower house win.
Now, the sheer physical scale of the effort this represents, it's absolutely staggering. During his victory speech, the candidate explicitly noted traveling 13,000 kilometers just during the campaign. To put that into perspective, in modern politics, where literally everything seems to be done digitally, this highlights a massive reliance on face-to-face, boots-on-the-ground campaigning.
And that really makes sense when you look at the vastness of the Farrer electorate itself, which covers an astonishing 126,000 square kilometers. In his address, David mapped out this immense geography, thanking voters across far-flung regional towns from Pooncarie all the way to Holbrook and right along the Murray River. It shows a strategy focused incredibly intensely on reaching remote and often disconnected voters.
But it wasn't just about the travel. The campaign made a very deliberate point about their resources. They claimed that their success relied heavily on a broad network of local volunteers and regional donations. In fact, they explicitly stated that the majority of their campaign funding came directly out of Farrer itself, rather than from external or national party funding. They framed this local financial investment as absolute proof of genuine community backing.
Moving right along to Section 2, agriculture, water, and environment. Okay, so here is a crucial takeaway. Right out of the gate in the speech, a rapid-fire list of priorities was established. This wasn't some vague, big-picture vision. It was a highly targeted hit list. They named the cost of living, dismantling net zero policies, changing water retention rules, upgrading health infrastructure, and lowering immigration demand. This basically sets the immediate legislative foundation for their entire overarching agenda.
When it comes to the environment, the sheer intensity of their stamps is crystal clear in this direct quote from David regarding the net zero emissions program. It's going to be pulled down, ripped down, and kicked out. The explicit argument being made here is that environmental policies must be tailored strictly to Australia's immediate domestic needs. They are completely rejecting international or global climate agreements, which they firmly view as harmful to local industry. And this Australia First mindset, well, it extends directly to their water policy too. The platform argues that water management absolutely must prioritize the immediate local region. The candidate drew a direct, unbending line between keeping water local and the ability to grow food, create domestic manufacturing jobs, and build true regional resilience against any future economic shocks.
So, how do they actually plan to enact this? Well, party leader Pauline Hanson laid out a very specific, step-by-step roadmap during her portion of the address to tackle what she described as a forgotten farming sector. Step 1, hold a local forum in Albury-Wodonga. Step 2, hear directly from the farmers on the ground rather than bureaucrats in offices. And Step 3, use that localized feedback to form an entirely Australia-first agricultural policy completely free from overseas interests. That brings us to Section 3. Infrastructure and regional health.
Now, this is easily one of the most fascinating political arguments made during the entire speech. The candidate bluntly argued, the price of a safe seat is neglect.
The theory they're presenting is that because Fair has historically been considered politically safe for the incumbent party, federal and state governments have essentially just ignored the region's infrastructure and health assets. They are framing this victory as a massive wake-up call to end that perceived complacency once and for all.
To tackle this alleged neglect, the campaign zeroed right in on highly specific local health priorities. They didn't just talk about broad national health care. They committed to upgrading ignored local health infrastructure, focusing heavily on facilities in Elbury and taking immediate action to resolve specific local legislative issues, like the Brown Bill, alongside future medical bills. It really demonstrates a strategy of marrying massive national talking points with hyper-localized grievance solving.
Let's dive into Section 4, Immigration and National Identity.
Looking closely at the exact rhetoric used to mobilize their voter base, we see the candidate framed immigration predominantly as a severe economic burden. By stating they won't entertain people coming to live off our balance sheet, the argument being made is that current immigration levels are creating an artificial demand, and they claim this demand is negatively impacting housing supply, education, and healthcare access for existing citizens.
Party leader Pauline Hanson then took this a step further, explicitly outlining some very firm cultural and national identity boundaries, stating, "I don't want Sharia law on our doors. I want people that want to come on board to be Australians." She draws a clear ideological line. She argued that while the party isn't entirely anti-immigration, they demand strict cultural assimilation and are actively rejecting the importation of what they view as conflicting foreign cultures.
When you step back and look at this speech holistically, it's pretty incredible how the platform ties immigration, trade, and the economy all together under one core philosophy, and that is absolute sovereignty. The overarching goal stated in these speeches is to eliminate Australian dependence on foreign countries entirely, for food production, for energy creation, and importantly, for cultural direction. It is, at its core, a philosophy of total national self-reliance.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, the gas and energy strategy.
Check out the stark contrast Pauline Hanson draws here between the existing national resource management and her soon-to-be-released gas policy. She argued that under the current system, Australia's natural resources are essentially just being given away to foreign corporate interests. Her proposed system demands a total reversal. Australia must retain a direct equity share in gas exploration, taking those profits and putting them straight back into the public purse. But, it's the mechanics of what actually happens to that money that is so vital to their platform. Hanson outlined the creation of a strictly protected fund. The explicit goals of this fund? To pay down the national debt and directly finance local facilities and industries. Crucially, she stated this fund must be legally structured so that no future government can, in her words, willy-nilly give it away to other countries or waste it. It's basically a plan to permanently lock in domestic resource revenue against any future political shifts. Well, that brings us to the end of our analysis, and it really leaves us with a massive question to ponder. By combining massive, grassroots, geographic campaigning with a fierce Australia First policy on the environment, immigration, and resources, this party has carved out a very distinct blueprint. So, how will this specific lower house victory and its highly localized yet nationally aggressive policy focus ultimately reshape the future of Australia's broader political landscape? Will the major parties adapt to this safe seat neglect argument, or will this blueprint spark even further independent and minor party shifts? It's absolutely a fascinating dynamic to watch unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep asking the big questions.